When did Christian witchcraft first begin? Here's the tea. This is complicated and depends on your definition of witchcraft. So we're going to use witchcraft as an overarching umbrella term for lots of different forms of mysticism. It essentially has been around since the beginning of Christianity itself. Because syncretism. Where did Christianity first hit its big boom? Rome. And what was Rome prior to Christianity? Very pagan. But Rome was also a melting pot for various different cultures, like most big cities are today. And so, there were Jewish people and Roman people very close to each other. So through syncretism, which I've said before does not happen overnight, it happens over long periods of time, but some Jewish/Christian customs kind of became syncretized into Roman culture. Therefore, Roman pagans started to venerate the Christian god alongside their pagan gods, and they called him Yao. We also have to look at Jewish mysticism. Judaism is closed, but we can't ignore the influence that Judaism had on Christianity, especially because, Jesus was Jewish. Now, today the primary form of Jewish mysticism is Kabbalah, but before that was Merkabah, which existed in the time of Jesus, and he was probably familiar with it. Some even believe that Paul was a Merkabah mystic. So between, 50 AD up until the Renaissance era, I don't really know. I gotta imagine it, again, was just these blends of cultures and syncretism kind of becoming integrated together. But this brings us to the Solomonic texts. Now, we don't quite know for sure when these were written. The Testament of Solomon was supposedly in the first few hundreds AD, and then the Greater Key of Solomon was 14th, 15th century, and the Lesser Key was 17th century. Now, King Solomon was technically Jewish, but these texts were not actually written by King Solomon, and they came out after Christianity was already a thing, so it gets a little murky. But you're calling on God and the angels to help you. So, around the 15th century, we start to see the term cunning folk come about. And these were primarily Christian cultures acknowledging these people to be healers and seers. There, of course, was controversy, at times at least, but the everyday people still went to these cunning folk, and often the cunning folk themselves were Christian. The witch trials did probably scare a lot of them off, so from there, I don't really know, but let's jump to the 60s here in the US, where there is a new age boom. Hippies, tarot, crystals, drugs. And the legalization of witchcraft in the 50s, which probably somewhat led up to this new age boom in the 60s. Now, as far as the 60s go, of course, some of the people in question were witches or just spiritual, but plenty of them were also Christian. I know right now we're seeing the lowest church attendance numbers in the US in US history, but even leading up to the 2000s, those numbers kind of slowly started to dwindle. And most former Christians turned pagans will tell you that Jesus is not the reason why they left the church, it's the people. Jesus Through Pagan Eyes by Reverend Mark Townsend is a great book. He interviews various pagans. Some of them are Christo-pagans, some are just pagans, but they all pretty much said the same thing, Jesus isn't the reason why they left, and some of them even missed him, and others just decided to take him with them. There's also other cultures like voodoo, which is not witchcraft, it is its own religion, but it's certainly not mainstream Christianity. They have their own customs and rituals, and sometimes their own deities, depending on what sector, but there's also like Catholic saints brought in. Granted, a lot of that has to do with the slave trade, which is a much darker circumstance, obviously. They were basically like using the names and faces of saints, but they were really meaning to call upon their deities, but then over time, saints just kind of became syncretized in. That's a whole other thing. But all of that to say, Christianity and witchcraft or magic or whatever you want to call it, they've been together since the very beginning.